What's up, everybody? It's Dana. I wanted to post a little video today as a follow up for the one that I posted a while back about getting back into flying again because I took the reintroductory flying lesson today. Uh, to recap, back a few weeks ago when the commemorative Air Force B-17 and B-25 were here, I ended up swapping places in the B-17 ride with this young guy named Blaze, and I couldn't ride in the nose of the B-17 because it was just too small and confined, and I ended up swapping places with him so that he could he'd ride in the front end of the airplane and I'd ride in the radio compartment of the airplane. And there's a big price differential between, one end of the airplane and the other. And long story short, he decided after a conversation that he was going to make up the difference by buying me an hour and a half worth of dual instruction in a Cessna 172. Which is, comes to about $300, which is the difference in price between the nose of the B-17 and where he ended up riding and the radio compartment that he originally paid for. So in other words, he got $300 worth of extra Warbird ride, and I paid for the premium one, but ended up taking the middle of the line one, and that's how we made up the difference rather than having to have the touring people from the CAF give me a refund or something. So, long story short, I hadn't flown as a pilot in command of an airplane for quite a long time, many years, in fact. And the regulatory and licensing environment of flying has changed significantly since then, as far as licensing and medical requirements and so forth. And I took that opportunity today after calling up the instructor that was recommended and took a reintroductory lesson. This is something that some older pilots do quite often. You end up having to life will intervene and you end up having to stop flying for a long time and decide that you miss it and you want to get back into it. And so that's what today was about. And so I went up to Gorge Aviation Services up at Walla Walla Airport and conversed with the instructor over the phone a couple of days ago and scheduled the ride for today. Woke up this morning. It was a little bit cloudy, but I know enough about aviation and weather and everything to know that it was probably still VFR, visual flight rules. And I've flown in light rain many times before, and I knew that today was probably actually going to be a pretty smooth day because there wasn't a lot of wind and it was cool, and so there wouldn't be a lot of thermals and there wouldn't be a lot of turbulence or anything. Get up there and have a basic refamiliarization introduction with the instructor, and he says finally, okay, well, let's go out and let's pre-flight the airplane, which he left to me. And now bear in mind, I haven't flown a Cessna 172 since the last time I flew the 172 from Skyrunners, which isn't there anymore, but that was in 2003, okay? So it's been 23 years. But I went out there and I grabbed the checklist and the fuel strainer and the fuel tank stick out of the airplane, turned on the master switch, lowered the flaps because the flaps on a 172, at least the one we flew, were electric. And started the pre-flight of the airplane. And the good thing about Cessnas is if you can pre-flight one, you can pretty much pre-flight all of them. There aren't really a lot of differences. You check the control surfaces, the ailerons and the elevators and everything for freedom of movement, and you make sure that the hinges are in good shape, and you make sure that there's no nuts and bolts backed out of their little fittings, and or safety wires missing or something. You make sure that the tires are good, the brakes are good, there's no cracks or wrinkles or anything in the airframe that shouldn't be there. There's no major issues with the electrical system. Things you check the oil, you strain the fuel and look for contaminants like water or sediment. You check the amount of fuel that you have, and you do this. You get out a little step ladder and you climb up on the wing. You open the cap, you put the little glass stick in it, you put your thumb over the end of the stick, you pull it up, and that's how much gas you've got, because it's demarcated on the tube. And you check the oil, you check the back end of the engine through the little oil access door. Make sure that all the wires and tubes, everything are where they should be and that they're in good shape. You walk up to the nose of the airplane, you check the propeller blades and make sure they don't have any nicks or cracks or anything, and you reach in there and you check the belt. I think it's the alternator belt, and make sure that it's good. You look at the nose gear, you make sure that it's got proper extension and pressure. You look at the you strain the fuel out of the belly strainer. You basically check and make sure that the airplane is fit to fly. It takes 20 minutes or so to do that. And it's basically the same whether you're flying a Cessna 172 or a Cessna 150, or probably a 182 or a Cessna Cardinal. They're all basically like that. And it was raining pretty decently at this time. But I pre-flighted the airplane in their hangar, and we got in and did a refamiliarization with the cockpit, basically. And luckily, this one still has steam gauges. It doesn't have a glass cockpit set up with all touch screens and everything, which I kind of don't like, to tell you the truth. I prefer steam gauges. In other words, the old school instruments like you see in the old movies. And towed the airplane out, and I got to admit that it was a hell of a thing to get the thing started, because it's the first flight of the day, the engine's cold, and I got to admit I flooded it. Airplanes don't start, especially carbureted ones like that, they don't start with just the turn of a key and the press of a button like a car. There's a specific procedure you got to do as far as priming the carburetor, and carburetor heat and mixture controls, and where you have the throttle set, things like that. And I flooded it the first time I tried to start it, and I'm like, oh, this isn't encouraging. And so we finally got the thing started, and I didn't have any problems taxiing out, doing the run up to check the pressures and magnetos and temperature and everything like that, because old carbureted airplanes like that still have magneto ignition. Most of them don't have electronic ignition, the old ones like that. Some do, but this one's old enough where it's still magnetos. So you run up the engine to, I think it was 1700, 1800 RPM. You check the mag switch, left one, the right one. Look for an RPM drop. Cycle the carb heat, look for an RPM drop. Check your pressures, check your controls. Taxi out. And I gotta say, the first half hour of the flight, I got to admit that I kind of felt like I was chasing it all over the sky a little bit. because I hadn't done it for a long time. And but after that first half hour, it started coming back to me big time. It Airplanes are different from cars. The pressures of the controls are different. You won't feel the steering wheel of a car pushing back against you or pulling away from you like you do the controls of an airplane, because it operates in three dimensions. So you get used to the fact that the controls have got to feel a certain way, and after you've taken a long time off, the feel has kind of deserted you a little bit. But after, like I say, the first half hour or so, I felt pretty confident with it, like I used to. And I circled around Uncle Wade and Aunt Yoey's house a few times, like, out over the south practice area like we used to. And that's outside of Milton Freewater. And we went up and we did a few stalls and some slow flight, a few basic things to make sure that my rudder coordination was good. You pick a point on the horizon, stick the nose of the airplane on that point on the horizon, and kind of hold it there while you move the controls back and forth. And that teaches you to kind of coordinate your rudder, which is what you control it, for those that don't know, with your feet. So you control an airplane with your hands and your feet as far as direction and attitude and everything goes. And we did this out over the practice area for about another 20 minutes or so, and it's time to come back and land. And I need to work on my radio communications, because I've just sort of fallen out of practice with it. There's a certain order of how you communicate with the control tower. It's who they are, who you are, where you are, what you want to do. So, for example, it would be Walla Walla Tower, Cessna 12345, 8 miles south, inbound for landing, or inbound for the option, or whatever. And that takes a little while for you to get back into the cadence of. And I found myself kind of tripping over it a little bit. I just got to do it more. And I'm in the left seat. I'm, flying the airplane, and come back over Walla Walla, enter the left downwind for runway 20. And you got to understand how a traffic pattern works. There's what they call a left traffic and a right traffic, and then there's straight in. And what we were doing today was left traffic, which means basically you are flying in a series of 90-degree left-hand turns around the airport runway. And that's called a left-hand traffic pattern. It's a racetrack pattern, basically. You look at it like a oval racetrack, where the main runway is the front stretch, and then you take off from that, and you do at 500 feet left-hand turn onto the crosswind leg, still climbing until you get to 1,000 feet above ground level. Make another left-hand turn onto downwind, opposite the direction you came, and offset about a half mile or so away from the runway. And then when you get to a certain point there, you're midfield, and it's when you make your next call to the tower for your next move, whether it's going to be to land or do a touch and go or whatever. And then you set your airplane up for landing with flaps and power settings and trim and so forth, and you make your next turn onto left-hand turn onto the base leg when you're about 45 degrees ahead of your expected touchdown point, and still adjusting your power settings, flaps, whatever you need. And then 500 feet above ground level, that from U-turn base to final, which is your final left-hand turn pointed towards the runway down the extended runway center line, and that's when you come in and land. And that's your basic left-hand traffic pattern. And so I fly this traffic pattern. I enter for my first landing, and landing is what makes you a pilot. The airplane will fly naturally. It's what it's designed to do. It's what it doesn't want to do is come in and land. That's what makes you a pilot, is being able to force the airplane back onto the ground in such a condition where you can actually use it again. So come in to land and bounced it pretty bad. I had a little bit too much speed and sink rate going on, because this was my, in fact, first landing in years and years, and touched the ground with the mains and the main landing gear, and then bounced back into the air because I was just doing it too fast. And finally came back down and landed, rolling straight ahead. And he says, okay, let's go around and do another one. Push the power back in, take off again. And the second time, I figured it out a lot better. You know, I remembered my pattern altitudes for the turns, and I remembered my air speeds and everything, and where I wanted the trim set a lot better. And came in and made a pretty acceptable landing the second time. And that's when we called it a day, and I taxied back in, and we pulled up to our little parking space and, shut everything down, chalked the airplane, went inside and debriefed. And so what I've got to do is I've got to book some more dual instruction. I've got to get a hold of the FAA to get an updated private pilot license, as in the actual card, because it's different now than it was when I got mine. And I've got to get a hold of a doctor that will give me what we call a basic medical certificate, which is different from the third class medical certificate that I used to have, because I'm not looking to become a commercial pilot or do anything really involved like that. I just want to be able to rent a small plane and go up and aviate for a while, and maybe take up one or two friends, and maybe take the occasional trip. At some point down the line, I'll maybe get myself a little antique puddle jumper style airplane. I shouldn't say a puddle jumper, because that's a very specific thing, but like a little Fairchild 24 or a Aeronca sedan or Cessna 170 or something like that I can just putter around and have some fun with, and take the occasional trip. Maybe fly to antique fly-ins and stuff like that. I'm not looking to become an airline pilot. I'm in my 50s, I'm not looking to become a flight instructor or fly cargo or crop dusters or anything like that. So there's no need to get a commercial license or enter such an involved pathway with it. But today, it felt pretty good to be back at the controls of an airplane again, and unlike the first time I did it, this time I know I can do it because I've done it before, and I just know that I need to blow the cobwebs out. I need to get back up to speed on the fundamentals of it and learn a few new things as far as technology, because I've never used a GPS in an airplane. I've never used ADS-B traffic advisory system. I've, never used a lot of that technology that's replacing all the old radio beacon based stuff for navigation that we used to use, like VORs, which they still teach it, but I kind of hate it because I was never good at VOR navigation. And I've got to refine my feel for the airplane. I've got to get back into the cadence of my communication skills on the radios again. I've got to refamiliarize myself with just aviating again. And today was the first step, and I think it was a good one. And I figured you guys just, you know how much I love flying and aviation in general, airplanes in general, and I thought you guys might like to hear about that. So wish me luck on this little step of the journey, and maybe in a few months' time, if I play my cards right and start flying regularly again and taking people up again, and having some fun. So that's where I'm at with that. And I'll talk to you all later. Bye.